So my name is Nate Brauner. I think some of you have heard me speak before. I did the entomology talk on bees, and I'm with the York Pocosin part of the peninsula. So that's where I typically do my stuff, but I also do with my beekeeping apiary master gardener hat on. I also do a lot of stuff with the rest of the peninsula as well when it comes to swarm hotline calls or anytime someone has a problem with bees. We don't have any other master gardeners who are beekeepers. Well, we have one other master gardener who's a beekeeper on the peninsula, but pretty much I'm the one who deals with those questions. So if those ever come in, you know who to send them to. This is a talk that is really supposed to help you understand not just how to use the tools yourself, but how to teach other people about how to use the tools that you typically will be using when you're gardening. I'm not going to go into everything. I didn't bring a chainsaw. I didn't bring an axe. I didn't bring a pickaxe. I didn't bring all sorts of other things. This is kind of limited to the more common things that you use. There are some times that you really want to spend a lot of money to get the right tool when you're working with things. And there are also areas where you can cut money and you don't have to spend a lot of money in order to be effective. My three rules of gardening are: it's got to be effective, okay? It's got to be a simple solution, or I'm not going to keep coming back to it. And if I can meet both of those and it can be cheap, well, that's better for me too. So one of the best tools that you can have as a master gardener or as a gardener is a 5 gallon bucket. Now you can pick these up for a couple of bucks at Lowe's, or you can go to most restaurants will have a food grade one that they got stuff in and they're just going to be throwing it out. It is a fantastic way to be carrying all of your stuff out to the garden and to be doing things. And if you're out there in the garden and you don't like bending over all the time and weeding like that, well, you just turn it over and you have a seat, and it's a whole lot easier to be doing some of those tasks in the garden sitting down on this than kneeling down or being on the ground all the time. But at the same time, these are invaluable too, right? You can pick these up a lot of times, especially around Earth Day. They'll be having knee pads that different groups will be handing out for free. If you have a kid who used to swim and has an old kickboard, it works great, but it is so much easier kneeling down on your knees when you're kneeling down on one of these than not having something like that and eating up your knees or your clothes as you're doing that while you're working. Another really simple thing that you can have that isn't going to cost you any money is a microfiber rag. Okay, there are no shortage to the numbers of times that is so much better than the old rags that we had when we were growing up that just were discarded t-shirts that you were using. The microfiber rags work really, really well. They have just the right amount of grit and absorbency for doing all sorts of things in the garden, even if it's just for cleaning off your hands. So, these cost next to nothing, but are really invaluable. Now, protective gear, you always hear people talking about PPE and protecting yourself first when you're in the garden. And nitrile gloves like this have become, well, they're not really nitrile. They've got a nitrile surface right here, but they have enough grip that they can protect your hands when you're just out weeding in the garden, when you're doing anything else in the garden. Protecting your hands, keeping them from getting, especially if you're going to be doing things like pulling poison ivy and things like that. Really simple to put these on, protect your hands. By the way, if you do get into a situation where you're pulling poison ivy in the garden, not only do you want to put something like this on your hands, but do yourself a favor and take one of those plastic shopping bags that you get at the grocery store. They cost what? Nothing, right? Put that over your hand like this, then reach down, grab the poison ivy, pull it out, and then the bag comes over it, and the poison ivy the urshol oil has never even touched your gloves, so you haven't contaminated your gloves, right? Then you can take that and throw that in the garbage, and you're fine, and you have 2 layers of protection. Because if you're anything like me, touching poison ivy, it leaps onto me from 5 feet away, and just by looking at it, I can get a rash. So you definitely don't want that. Now, these gloves are great for protecting your hands and keeping your hands okay when you're doing general tasks in the garden. and they cost, when you buy, you can buy an 8 or a 10 pack of these for $8 or $10. I mean, so $1 a pair of these. You'll go through one, you use it for a month, and then when you wear it out, just go on to the next one, right? But when I'm pruning, when I'm working around thorns, these aren't going to provide me enough protection. So it's always nice to either have leather gloves or faux leather gloves that give me a little bit more protection when I'm working around something with thorns on it, that I can reach in and grab these as well and just use them. It's, these again, you can get at some of the big box stores. You can get a 3-pack of these at some of those membership big box stores. You can get a 3-pack of these for about $10 in the springtime when they're doing their spring sales. So that is really something to be looking out for when the spring sales start going on. That's when you want to buy a lot of your stuff. One of the other things that you'll start seeing that you'll use a lot in the garden, cutting implements. When you're going to do any pruning, when you're going to be doing anything to cut back your shrubbery, your trees, all sorts of stuff like that. And you will see 2 broad categories of pruners. You will see bypass pruners that look like this and anvil pruners that look like this. Bypass pruners are like scissors. They work exactly like scissors, where the blade, you have a fixed portion of it right here. The blade bypasses that fixed portion and cuts off whatever you want to cut. Anvil pruners work a lot more like a hammer and an anvil, where they have a flat surface that you are going to compress the branch against, and you are going to use a cutting surface to cut that off as it's compressing it against that flat anvil. Now, if I have a tree right here, and we're going to get into pruning later, right? But say this is coming off of the tree, right? And I want to prune this off right here. So this part is going to go away. This part's going to stay on the tree. If I were to use the anvil pruners and cut it right here, when I press down on that and cut it, this anvil is going to compress the tissue on both sides of the cut, right? So there's going to be a little bit of damage on this side, and there's going to be a little bit of damage on the other side. I don't care about the part that went away. But I care about that damage that I just did to the part that's going to be staying on the tree, because that is an area that gives the ability for some disease to set in. It damages the tree. You don't really want to do that. With a bypass pruner, I can determine how I'm holding this. So I want the cutting surface to go against the part of the branch that's going to stay on the tree, right? In this case, I want it to be on my right, your left side. And so when I cut like this and cut that off, it compresses the side that is coming off, but does not compress the tissue on the part of the tree that's staying there. And so it doesn't damage it. So it's much healthier for the tree to be using bypass pruners in general. I have these anvil pruners only to bring them out when I teach this class and to tell people what not to buy. Okay, so don't buy these, because they're, if you have the choice between the two, it's worth spending the money to get the bypass pruners. Now, spending money. I don't endorse brands, right? Of course, because we're master gardeners and we don't endorse different brands. But brands matter when it comes time to buying a couple of things, and pruners are a good thing to buy. You can see the brands that I use up here. You're welcome to use whichever brands you want, but sometimes it pays attention to get from certain brands. I will tell you that some of the brands, if you write to them, if you go to their website and go onto their website, some of the really nice ones that have a long history in making pruning shears, things like that, they will offer you free pruning books that they will send to you on their website that you can use. Corona is one of the ones that does that. And so you can write away to that. And so that can be a reference for you going through that, or you can tell people about that reference if you teach a class like this, and you want to give them a memory jog, so how they can remember things. Now, pruning shears like this are great, but in order for them to work, they've got to be sharp. All right. And most times people keep these out in the garage. Maybe they'll bring a brush and they'll brush it off like this from time to time. But the idea of sharpening something like this sometimes is a little bit causes people some apprehension. All right. So there's no time like standing up in front of a group of people to do something that to demonstrate how easy something like this is to do. So most bypass shears are very similar to this in that they have a spring on them. These springs come off really easily like this. If you lose it, you can buy replacement springs, especially if it's from some of the more reputable brands that have been around for a while. Now this just flops open and shut like that. There are 3 screws on here that hold the whole thing together. This one right here, this screw, the nut and the screw right here, is the pivot around which this operates. But so you don't have to crank that down too much and make it too hard to open, there's a bear claw right here that's held in place by another screw that you have to remove in order to take this one off, so you don't have to over tighten them. Well, fortunately, that's really easy to take off if you have the right size wrench. And all I have to do is turn that and take that off, and I can remove that bear claw. Right there like that. And once I do that, then it's super easy to remove the big one because I don't overly tighten that one down. I'm just taking off the nut right here that has teeth around it. And I take that off. And now I can take this whole thing apart. And when I take this whole thing apart, one of the things I can take apart is the blade off of it. So now I have the blade right here. Now, if this blade gets nicked up, if it gets dinged up, you can buy replacement blades for it, slap it on there, and you can keep these for decades. And you can be using the same pruning shears for a long time. But now I got this blade right here, and I need to figure out how to clean it off. Now, if it's got gunk on it, I can just use a metal brush, and I can brush it off like this and get it fine. I can use steel wool. I can use some sandpaper and just take off any rust that's on here and clean that off just fine. It makes it really simple to do. Now, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can sharpen this. If you have a whetstone, you can use that. You can use a file like this. The important thing with this is that you have a bevel here that goes along the cutting surface, and you want to keep the angle of that bevel the same as it was. So if you match that bevel, you can use your file to go along it like this in one smooth motion and sharpen it like that. That's one possible way to do it, and you can determine your file depending on what you're trying to do with this. But I like these. This is a carbide sharpener, right? It's really simple. In fact, when I went to that membership big box store that I got some of this from, they included this in it. But you can also buy these separately. And this is one of those little pieces of kit that I use again and again and again, and it makes it so simple because all I have to do is match the angle of the bevel on there and sharpen it like this, and in almost no time at all, I have this completely sharpened. It doesn't take more than 6 to 8 passes here to really get that nice and done. And then when I'm done, I make one simple pass over the back to take any burrs off of that. This is sharpened, right? One of the other ways that I protect my stuff is I get some shop wax that I can use with my handy microfiber towel, that once I've done that, I can take a little bit of this shop wax, and this is a shop wax that I can use on metal. I can use it on leather, so I use it on my gloves. I can also use it on wood, and I can put a slight wax coating on this, and it helps protect the metal, so it helps keep it from rusting, right? So once I've done that, now I can just reassemble the whole thing, which is really difficult to do, especially if you lose a part. Hopefully I won't do that. So put that on like that. I have this part right here. Put that back together. Take the nut, Loosely put this back on. Get a little snug so it doesn't wobble, but not so snug that I'm forcing things to grind on each other. I can also use a little bit of silicone in there if I want to use that. Silicone sprays, WD-40. There's all sorts of different ones like that. So I can do that. And then all I have to do is put that bear claw back in. That's going to help hold the whole thing in place. You always want to, when you are putting screws back in, you want to finger tighten it first, not go straight to the wrench, because if you're cross threading it, you won't notice that with the wrench quite so much, but you will notice it if you're trying to put that back on. And then all I have to do is tighten that down. That one I want to make nice and tight so it doesn't slip, and now this works just fine. All I have to do is put the spring back in. And that is not overly difficult for anyone here to be able to do something like that. Clean your pruning shears just like that. So anyway, I like doing that as part of the class because lots of people neglect that. And if you can keep your pruning shears clean, then you're going to make a clean cut on the plant. It's going to be a lot better for the plant's health. You're not going to introduce diseases easily, and you want to take care of that. One of the things I forgot to bring with me that I almost always bring is the way to sanitize your cutting implements when you're working in the garden. I have a little spray bottle of Listerine that I take with me. Listerine is great because it will naturally, I just have to spray it on it. I don't even have to wipe it off. It's not going to hurt anything. The alcohol in the Listerine, you don't want to use a non-alcohol mouthwash. It's the alcohol that you're using in there. Spraying that on there will take care of killing any germs that are on there, so you can go from one plant to the other and not worry about spreading disease. Now, pruning shears work great for small branches like this. But if I was going for a much larger branch, this is not what I want to use. I don't want to be sitting there all day trying to cut it with something like this. That's where I need a little bit of leverage. Lever long enough, you can move the world. So that's where these come in, some loppers come in real handy. Same thing with sharpening these, with cleaning them. The same principles apply with that. These were my dad's. He got them probably before I was born, and I'm still using them, right? And so I keep for keeping wooden handles like this clean and everything. If they start getting a little bit some burrs on them, I can use some of that sandpaper to sand it down and make it nice and smooth. And after I'm done with sanding that down, you want to put something on it to protect it against any dampness. So again, my shop wax works really nicely, and I can just take that shop wax. It's a paste. I put it on there, and then I have protected this handle so it can last even longer, and no problem. It works really simple like that. So really helps to have something that you can use like that. Now, sometimes the branches are a little bit bigger than what you can even use those loppers on. And when it comes to that, and I didn't bring my pole saw with me. I'm sure all of you guys have seen pole saws, chainsaws, things like that. But simple saw like this can work for some of them. Now, this is a nice one. I didn't buy this separately. It came in one of those, sets that I got. And this works really nicely. You want to pay attention to the brand because there are some brands that make these and they would do well to cut butter and not much else, right? But there are some that really work quite well. My favorite, and one of the other things I do, I work with scouts. I used to be a scoutmaster. Now I'm an assistant scoutmaster. We used to use bow saws a lot. We used to teach them saw safety. One of the big things that you'd have to teach the scouts with bow saws is it's a great way to cut yourself, right? Because you have this exposed blade all the time. So you always have to be worried about that exposed blade. It works great for projects, but you have to watch out for that blade. And invariably, when we be out learning how to use cutting tools, someone would end up nicking themselves on the blade, and then you'd have to practice first aid, right? This is a great solution to that. This is a very simple, I fold it up and I don't have to worry about nicking myself. I can carry this around in my car with me if I need to. If I go out and I have a swarm call and I need to take a branch off, this is a simple way to do it. I extend it. It works really well, and this cuts through wood like butter. This is just so nice and sharp, and it works really well. I've had it for a number of years. It's ergonomic. I can hold it like this. It just makes the cutting so easy. So if it's at my level where I don't have to reach up very far, I'm using this more than just about anything else. It's fantastic. It fits nicely in a little tool bag, and that works really well. So that's pretty much the cutting implements that I wanted to talk about. I want to move on to other tools that you're going to be using when you're gardening or when you're teaching other people to garden. One of the one of the one of the things that we have to do is dig, right? So let's talk about digging implements. Everyone needs a little garden trowel that you can take with you into the garden, right? For planting little seedlings in there, for planting something bigger, a good trowel is worth everything for you in the garden. The problem with these is that there are a lot of these that are sold that are really, really cheaply made, right? This is another one where you can go to some stores and you can buy, they'll have a whole bunch of them, and then over on the far end, it will say, this one's guaranteed for life. Usually that's the type of thing that you want to be buying when you're buying one of these trowels, because that's something that you won't get the separation between the digging surface and the handle right here, which is where a lot of them fail. I got this one. It's one of those that you can, that they'll replace it for life if it breaks. And this is really solid. Now, I'm not going to dig out a tree with this. I've got to use it, the right tool for the right job. But it also has a serrated surface right here for cutting through any small roots. It's got the inches right here. So if I need to be burying something at a specific depth, I have that right here in front of me. And it's ergonomic. So it's easier to grip this, and I don't get as tired when I'm using it. So I like a good trowel like that. Realize that there are all sorts of specialty trowels. Some people have problems grabbing a handle like this. Maybe arthritis, maybe they have different abilities that they can't grab a handle in the same way that most of us can. So having a curved handle like this can take care of some of those. I can grab it like this, or I can also grab it like that. And they make them of varying widths. So if I'm doing a very narrow trench along, sometimes it really helps to not have to remove as much material. So I can use a narrower throat like this on the digging surface to get into that area. So having a number of different tools that I can switch between helps me do the job a little bit easier, reduces the stress on me, and helps out. That being said, and I told you how much I love this one, I hardly use this anymore when I'm planting things. Why? Because a couple of years ago, I was introduced to the Hori Hori, and this is my digging implement of choice now. It might look a little bit like a dagger. It's I think Japanese in origin, but these tools are absolutely fantastic. You can get them at a number of different garden centers. This one is made in Italy. So similar, it's got the depth gauge, which if you care about that, then great. But this is great for digging a hole, pulling, drop a bulb in, and you're set. You don't have to dig the hole and then put it in. No, stab, pull, drop, and keep going through your garden. It works that way for seedlings too. It's a simple way of doing it. It is a very versatile implement. It also has a serrated edge right here. If I have to cut through any small little roots or root fibers, it works really well. And then back in the sheath. Of course, you want to, before you put it back in the sheath, clean any dirt particles off of this, because the worst thing you want to do is foul up your sheath, and then you're having to clean all of that out and continuously clean this. If you take care of tools like this, they will last you as long as my dad's loppers last, which is a really long time. So again, Hori Horis, they cost a little bit more. These are fantastic little implements for digging the garden, for planting seedlings. I grow everything in my vegetable garden from seed every year. So I have a whole bunch of seedlings come April when it's time to take them out to the garden and transition to the garden that I want to plant out there. I don't use any of this stuff. This is the only thing I take out there with me because it's really simple to make that little hole, drop it in, put the dirt back around it, and we are set to go. Right? So That's that stuff. Let's talk about weeds. I'll get to the larger digging implements and stuff like that in a little bit. Most people have weeders like this. They're fantastic. While I talk about weeds, let's get the big elephant in the room out of the way at the first. The best way to weed is to get all of the roots out when you're pulling out the whatever you're weeding out. Get all the roots out, and that way that's not going to come back. Sometimes that's not completely possible, either from your limitations, either physically, maybe from your time limitations. You don't have time to go out and dig out every single weed. I still love this quite a bit, but sometimes you need to use a hoe or use something like that. Now, I was never a huge fan of hoes, but then I realized that I was using my hoe completely wrong. So I would go out and I would do I would scrape the surface and I try and get the weeds out like that. And this is the wrong way to use the hoe. And the way that I can tell that is because my thumbs are pointed in the wrong direction. If I turn it like this, then this becomes a shaving implement. And as long as that hoe is sharp, I can come along the surface and separate the green growing part of the plant from the roots, and I can shave off a lot of it all at once. And it is very effective at doing that, but I have to take care of my cutting surface to make sure it's nice and sharp. How do I do it? The same way I was showing you about doing about keeping your pruning shears nice and sharp. Very simple to do that, but if you do that, it becomes a lot easier to use the hoe for what it's intended. It's not a digging implement, it's a shaving implement. Similarly, you can get hand tools that are like that, which is what this is, and I can use this in much the same way for more up close and personal when I am down on the ground, when I'm using my when I'm using my kneeling pad, and down there I can use it like this and easily spread that away. These two are Japanese in origin, but there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can get stuff like that. Now, sometimes when you have weeding that has to be done where you are not necessarily weeding out of dirt. You're weeding in between cracks in concrete or asphalt or pavers or things like that, where you really have to get down and pull out every individual weed. And that would be nice if you can do that. But sometimes you can't get enough purchase on that to pull out the whole thing by the roots. Sometimes you can't get down there because maybe you have a bad back, or you're aching a little bit that day. There are other options to doing that. Now, I will give you a big caveat with this, that if you are on county property, you have to get permission from the county to do this technique there. But if you're doing it around your home or on private property or other places, the flamethrower can be a really good option for you. Remember that flamethrowers cause fires. You don't want to be doing this on a wooded area over there, or you're going to have a whole bunch of other problems. But before you think that I'm a crazy guy who's just coming out here and talking about flamethrowers because I'm a little boy at heart and I like playing with fire, this can be a really simple way of dealing with weeds. All you have to do is turn it on a little bit, and then I have a throttle right here with this hand, and I can walk around and I can take care of weeds just with this. So I have areas around my gutters, the gutters out on the street where I have weeds growing, and I don't want to get down there in the street and be digging out every single one. I can use this, and I can burn out those weeds. It's very effective at taking care of them. And it's a little bit cathartic too, because sometimes those weeds just really bug me. And if I burn them out, then I might feel a little bit better about that. So, it's a fun way. Be careful. This does get hot because, again, fire. So you want to be careful using this. But the first time I heard someone talking about using a flamethrower and getting rid of weeds, I was like, come on, really? But really, it's a good potential tool in your toolkit. It's not the only one, but it might be the tool that you need at the time. All right. Let's talk about a couple of other things, and then we'll kind of wrap up. wanted to keep this short. We're getting into the fall, right? And so everyone is used to having one of these around their house, probably, right? Which are great, and these are fantastic for raking the leaves off of your lawn. Remember, if you want to have this gets a little bit more into the naturalist side of things. If you want to have butterflies in your yard, and you want to have a pollinator garden in your yard, and then you take all the leaves from the yard where all of the butterflies have laid their eggs, or maybe their chrysalises are in those leaves when they fall off the trees, and you rake them all off and send them off to the dump, that's the next generation. That's your spring butterflies that you just sent off to the dump, right? So leaving your leaves in your yard, not shredding up all of your leaves in your yard, if you want to have butterflies in your yard, might be a really good idea. There's a whole video that I have on that. But leaving the leaves in your yard, if you want to talk about that a little bit more, I'd be happy to talk about that another time. This is more about the tools. This is a great way to not destroy all of the leaves in your yard by just raking them up this way, not leaving them for your lawnmower to go over them, but using this to rake them into a back part of your yard that you keep more natural. Now, that's great, but that doesn't get between shrubs very well, right? So that's where things like this come in handy. Now, I've been using this for years, which is why this handle's broken off a little bit, but I can adjust the tines on this quite a bit. So if I need to get into a tighter area, I can just adjust the tines on this and make it wider. I can make it more narrow, and it makes this a really versatile tool for using it in my yard. I can also shorten or lengthen the handle. So these are available at most garden centers, most big box stores. Rakes like this can really come in handy. That being said, blowers have come a long way, right? And blowers now are not the gasoline monsters that you have to mix the oil and the gasoline to have a blower that's going to be really loud and you have to keep it going the whole time and maybe it doesn't want to start on you. These make it super, super simple with lithium-ion batteries. And some of them even have a throttle on it. So I can turn this on and I can turn it up, or I can turn it down, or I can use the turbo function on it. And I can use one of these to clean wet leaves off of my back lawn in very little time. And that takes a lot less effort than that. So if you're looking for something that doesn't take as much physical effort in the yard, I mean, you still have to move this around, but come on, it's a lot easier than raking your entire yard. So blowers are a great option. They're not that heavy, and they've really come a long way in the last 10 to 15 years. Even the last 5 years with the advances in the battery technology that we have. So highly recommend one of these for working around. And then the last thing that I want to talk about, one more rake. So steel rakes like this, really good for spreading mulch, really good for spreading even your compost when you're out there in the garden. Don't forget that it's not just this way that you can use it, but if you're looking to smooth things out, turning it over like this is a fantastic way to use them. And remember, since I'm talking about safety here, this is never the way to store a rake, right? Or you're going to end up with a face plant of this when you step on it the wrong way. All right. I am missing one of my shovels. I don't know if I left it out there. It's Phil's old shovel that you'll know it when you see it. So shovels are a great last thing to start or to talk about with this. One of the big things with shovels are, should I get a nice wooden handle like this that might work really well, or should I get a fiberglass handle like this? You don't have to sand the fiberglass handle. It's going to work just great. What I would recommend to you if you're going to get a fiberglass handle is also look in that section for the ones that say guaranteed for life. This is the third shovel that I have had like this, because over time I end up using it a lot, and sometimes I give it a little bit too much love, and I have to replace it. So all you have to do is walk back into the store where you bought it hand it back to them, and they'll tell you go get a brand new one, and you take that and you walk out. So over time you pay a little bit more up front for it, but you end up getting quite a bit out of it. The nice thing about the fiberglass handles is it's almost no maintenance. The bad thing about them is it doesn't have quite the same feel as a wood handle. So, I do prefer the wood handles. You want to not store this with a whole bunch of dirt on it. And you also want to avoid storing it so it's getting a whole lot of rust on it. Now, there's a couple ways to take off the rust. You can use navel jelly to take it off. It's a caustic way of taking off the surface level layer, and you'll be fine. One of the ways that you can do it is with an abrasive brush like this, where you can just put it on the end of a drill. And it's an easy way, after you have brushed this off, that you can take this off. And it does a pretty good job of removing the rust. The other way that you can, did you see it out there, or did I forget it altogether? Okay. You can also use your very cheap and great and easy to get at like Harbor Freight for a couple of bucks. Sorry, at discount stores for a couple of bucks. See, I slip up. A easy metal brush that you can either take off some of the bigger stuff or just use this to clean off some of the rust and clean off of the dirt off of it, so you can use it. But once you've done that, and once you've done a nice job cleaning it off, then especially when you're getting ready to store it for the winter, what else do? You pull out your shop wax. You get a little bit of shop wax on here, and it helps protect it from getting rusty in the future. So this one I specifically put out so I could clean it a little bit here in front of you. I'm going to be giving this a good cleaning when I get home, and it'll be right back to brand new. They're pretty easy to do. At this point, what I normally do is pull out a shovel that has been sitting outside and sitting in the dirt for the last 20 years. And it's all corroded. And it's like, you can take care of your tools, or you cannot take care of them, and then they look like that. Unfortunately, I forgot that at home. But it's really easy to spruce up these tools. Go to a garage sale. Buy the old tools that someone was using, and now they're moving out of the house and they're selling their old tools. With a couple of cheap tricks, you can clean it up, make it like new, and then you can have a great implement of your own that you can use. So you don't have to spend lots of money on everything. You can use what's already out there and find them at some good prices. So that's the quick and dirty of tools of the trade. What questions do you guys have for me?
Do you sharpen the edge of that shovel?
I do when it's gotten dull, and the best way to do that is I turn it over like this, and I can use a file, and best way to do it is like this, right? And just take it and go along the edge like that. Put a fresh edge on it, and once I've cleaned it off, it works great. Yes.
When you were talking about using Listerine, moving from plant to plant, how long do you wait? Is it just like spray,
wipe it off with a microfiber rag, and go.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to take long at all with it.
Okay.
Yeah. What other questions? The question was how long if I'm trying to sterilize this, not really sterilize it, but if I am trying to disinfect this when I'm moving from one plant to the other, how long do I have to wait? Spray it with Listerine, wait a second or two, wipe it off, and move on to the next plant. You don't have to wait very long.
So it has to be Listerine.
It has to be an alcohol-based mouthwash. So Listerine isn't the only alcohol-based mouthwash,
Okay.
but there are other ones. Crest makes one that is a great mouthwash, but it's not alcohol-based, and you're looking for the alcohol to kill the germs that are on the surface. Yes.
Can you just use rubbing alcohol?
You can use rubbing alcohol. That's a possibility. It's whichever one is easier for you to put it in a little spray bottle. Yeah, you just don't want to leave much residue on there. You don't want to leave a whole lot of rubbing alcohol or Listerine residue on there. get it all damp and then go to the next one and cut.
Or does the Listerine have